Okay, by way of introduction, my name is Brent Dragoo. I was the advisor for Liberty Christian School, which literally is right over there. We got incredibly lucky and blessed that we were so close to the Speedway, be a part of these workshops, be a part of activities at the Speedway on a regular basis. I literally had my interview at school. They said yes, and the next question was, will you run the solar car team? I was like, what is that? Right? So I had to do my own research, learned about Dr. Marks, learned about his time at Winston, was actually involved in a number of his other competitions at Winston before I built the solar car program. In my years of running the solar car program, I learned a lot of different things that had nothing to do with the car. And what I'm here to speak with you about today is how that works. First of all, administration asked me if I would run the team. So they already knew about the program, right? In talking to a number of people, a lot of times your administrators have no idea what solar car is, right? So you have to teach them, educate them about the program, then about the benefits of what the program has to offer to your students. Very next question, who's going to fund this program? As you all know by now, this is not a cheap endeavor, right? You can build a car, and I have seen it done, for $5,000. Right? You can build a car for $30,000, right? Where you come up with the money is entirely up to you, but that needs to be your very first question. Is it a department, right? Is it a class? Do not count out parents, right? Parents will, in my opinion, be your biggest source, right? Find students with parents who are interested in helping you out. The community, every one of y'all come from a community that rallies around a school, right? Communities love to be involved. Next one, you've been asked to run a program. You know how you're going to pay for it. The next one is, do you want this to consume your life?
Yes.
Right?
No, but it will.
It will consume your life. Right? So, are you going to do this by yourself? Do you need a co-teacher? Do you need a helper? Right? Do you have enough kids that can help you? I was just talking with a gentleman in the back, and we talked about, as an advisor, this is our hobby. Right? This is what we enjoy doing. Right? I can tell you, having done this for almost 20 years now, there's a rule at my house: my family will not let me talk solar car. Right? I'm not allowed to talk about it at dinner. Not allowed. If I'm at a party and somebody brings it up, my wife just glares at me. Okay? So, understand that's real. Money has nothing to do with how you win. Right? These guys right here literally built that car for $5,000. I watched it run.
That was the best car ever. I'm not biased at all.
He was on that team, right? Let me see. That was my team I took to Australia in 2015, right? So many problems, but we crossed the finish line, right? You define success by your goals, right? That year there were 2 high school teams that showed up to a world challenge. There were professional teams, there were universities from around the world. Greenville is headed there in a couple of months, right? This one right here, best car we ever built. Next year, after we learned all this stuff, that car drove all the way to Minneapolis, right? Absolutely wonderful. This car was a team that won in Australia. Didn't even cross the finish line, right? We talked to these guys a lot through that race. So how much you spend does not necessarily have to do with how good your team is going to be. When do you meet? Again, we were just talking. The people in this auditorium right now, there's a fair number of y'all taking dual credit calculus, right? Taking AP biology, right? Taking some pretty high-powered classes. It is really difficult to put together your solar car team in such a way that you can work whenever you want, because you really can't, right? My school, I was very much limited to after school time, right? Being able to get kids out of class to go do a presentation at a company Wednesday morning was really difficult, right? So as an advisor, you need to decide, when can we work, right? Do you make solar car a class, right? I had that question a number of times, and we talked about it, and never ended up doing it at my school, but I know other classes and other schools who do, right? Something to think about. I have weekends. We called it a shake and bake. How often have you been invited to Home Depot? Saturday morning, put up your car. There's a farmer's market or something going on. People come around, ask questions. In Dallas, in June, that's called a shake and bake, right? You're going to stand in the sun all day and shake hands, okay? Where do you find your students? As you know, math and physics, in my opinion, is your breeding ground. You can walk into your classes. I know a lot of y'all are math and or physics teachers, so you already have an opportunity to know who those kids are. I discovered, kind of observationally, many years ago, 3D spatial ability was a way to identify kids who think differently, right? I kind of got lucky. Mr. Westlake talked about his son. My son also grew up solar car, right? In fact, the first time he drove a car, he was 9 years old. Had to go around the parking lot and into the shop. But I didn't fit in the car, he did, right? He was a Rubik's Cube guy. I couldn't do it, right? But took him to his first competition, and I saw all these kids. They're not just 3x3 or 4x4 or tetrahedral or all these different shapes, but their brain saw it, and my brain didn't see it. So when I got back to school, I bought 5 cubes, and I literally just set them on the table. I didn't give kids instructions. I didn't say fix it. I didn't say, so one of them was done, and the other 4 I messed up on purpose. For weeks, I had kids that would walk in, look at them, and keep going. And then I had some kids who would walk in and just play with them until I said, put it down, right? Then I had some that would come in during break and lunch, and that's all they were consumed, figuring out how to make this work, right? I asked them to be on the solar car team, right? That was the brain I was looking for. Mechanical types, electrical types, you know the difference. We also talked in the back, you need somebody on your team who can talk to the TV camera, right? You need somebody on your team who knows how to social media post, right? Who knows how to run Facebook. And today, there are hundreds of other apps that I'm not even sure about, but kids are using, right? Overcommitted students are not helpful, right? If you've got a kid who, and you know the type, they're out there, right? You have to know that before they get on your team, right? Are they using solar car as a resume checkbox? Or are they using solar car as something that they want to be involved in? This is an assistant principal standing in the hallway, passing time. Be that guy, right? Be this administrator type. Students know, they know your name, they know what you do, right? This is also a time when your solar car kids can come up and talk to you, right? You gave them a project last night at work day. Today, they've accomplished what they're trying to accomplish, but they don't have your class until the late afternoon, right? If you're standing in the hallway, they can still get in touch with you. This is also a time when you can spot what I call drivers. You don't want 250-pound linemen driving your car, right? But a lot of times cheerleaders are not in your class, but they want to be involved. So be this guy. Once you've found students, how do you put your team together, right? How do you know who wants to be on your team and who doesn't? There are schools who give tests. There are schools who can't possibly give tests because there are only 12 people available. I get it, right? Your situation will dictate what it takes to put together a team, right? Membership. Again, there are some schools have the ability. There are that many people who want to be involved, right? Being on the solar car team comes with X amount of money, right? Sign a contract, hey, in the next school year, you're responsible for X. That's one way to do it, okay? Now that your teams are taking shape, right? I talked about this earlier, identify assistants. When you go to work today, a lot of times you may have 10, 12 people to show up to work. Well, that's great. One person cannot oversee that, right? One person cannot oversee what's going on in the shop with another group in your classroom working on some type of other machine, right? Again, totally depends on your situation, but you have to consider that. Consider your allies. We very much utilized our art department, right? Our art teacher, who happens to be a wrestling coach, there's only 2 of those in America. One was at our school, right? But he loved the mechanical workings of solar car, right? He actually created a unit for his freshman art students, mechanical. They had to come look at our car to get inspiration, okay? So identify people in your school who are willing to help you find the right students, who are willing to help you foster your program. How many does it take? Right? Literally went to 2019 with 5 guys. Do not recommend it, but I did it because they were the right 5 guys, and we had a great time doing it, right? Now, I've also been at races where there were 20 plus students on a team. There's a whole lot of standing around, right? There's a whole lot of nothing happening because everybody else thinks somebody else is doing it, right? Now, if you're in a situation where every kid is paying their way to get here, that's one thing, right? But if you have to put together hotel rooms and all that kind of stuff, be very judicious about who you take to the race, right? Where are you going to work? Oh, this is a big one, right? Mark Westlake's got his own shop, right? Been building cars for years, right? That is an incredible situation. Greenville, they've got an incredible space, right? For those of y'all new programs just getting started, that first year they asked me to build a car, I didn't have a space. They literally gave me an old portable, right? Here, you can have this room on the end. We literally walked everything in the door, knowing full well we would not be able to get the car out, right? So, into that school year, we have a rolling chassis. We need to get it out the door to begin working on some things. Maintenance had to come cut a hole in our door, and we had to build a ramp to get the car out of the shop, out of the classroom rather, and down to the parking lot level. We had a grandparent, we had a grandparent who was an NHRA drag racing crew chief. This guy was absolutely incredible. First time we met him, we had no idea who he was. We had other people say, you need to go look him up, right? Next day I called him. I said, Mr. Meyer, thank you so much for your offer. We would love to have you help. He was like, my shop is a mile and a half from your school. He said, please come by anytime you want. At that point, he was retired. His shop was bigger than his house. He had every piece of equipment to build a car known to man. You name it, he had it. My kids learned more in Larry's shop than I could ever teach them in my classroom, right? So please feel free to reach out. Please feel free to find somebody who knows more than you do, okay? What kind of tools do you have? Right? Do you own a toolbox at your school? I didn't when I started, right? It took me a long time to find the right stuff, right? You only get X amount of budget if you're working in a school, right? So you can't buy everything the first year, right? You got to prioritize. I'm going to buy this next year, right? I don't remember the order in which I bought my tools. Obviously, we started with drills first. By the time I left, dude, maintenance wanted my shop, right? Solar car attendance decides whether or not you get to travel. If you don't ever show up to a work day, but yet you want to come to Texas Motor Speedway in July, I'm not really seeing that happening, right? And I lived right over there, right? I got really lucky. But I absolutely have asked students not to come back. They show up to work day because their mom works at school, and then they just sit there and look at you, right? Initiative is enormous. I cannot tell you how to do everything or in the order in which to do it. If you're going to be part of a solar car team, it's time to grow up, right? It's time to understand that your work ethic is on display every moment of every day, okay? Keep track of who works on the car and how long, right? Keep track of who shows up at extra events, right? That type of stuff goes a long way. Excuse me. Foster their passions. Every kid in here is different. Every kid in here has a different skill set, right? Figure out what their love is and use it, right? You will find that students have a lot more buy-in when they're doing something that they truly love to do than when you give them a job that they can't stand, that, oh yeah, they might do it once, but they're not going to do it on their own, okay? Foster their passions. Find your electrical guys. Early in my tenure, I had one guy who had absolutely no idea about the car. Wasn't really interested in the car, but his dad was a roofer. He had been driving trailers since before he had a driver's license, right? He knew everything there was to know about the trailer. He knew everything to know about hitches, etc. On and on, you get the point, right? He organized our trailer. Absolutely. We had that organization who followed us for another 10 years after he graduated, okay? Telemetry, that is a different skill set. You got mechanical, you got electrical, and then you got telemetry, right? You're going to have to find those guys in a completely different place, but incredibly valuable. Start an alumni association. You've got your team. You've been to a few races. Stay in touch, right? Reach out, right? Whether it's by text, whether Facebook, whatever method you have today, right? All these solar car guys have been coming back for years. This is an alumni association, right? They have an incredible wealth of knowledge of things that they've seen, right? I've got kids who graduated from all over America. I could name them all. I've had students on Georgia Tech's solar car team. I've had students on A&M's solar car team. Learn what they know, right? I've heard all kinds of stories about they went off to college. I was saying earlier, we had one of my students went to A&M, wanted to be on the solar car team. Went to the first meeting, they kind of laughed, "You're a freshman, you won't really do anything." He sent an email to the Dean of Engineering, "Why don't we have a Formula E team?" Got an email back a couple days later, "Oh, nope, we're not doing that, costs too much money, da 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 da." 2 months later, he gets an email saying, "Yes, we're about to start a Formula E team, would you like to be the president?" Come to find out, General Motors had signed a new contract with Formula E, and they were making all of their sponsor teams start a Formula E team. He said, "If you don't have a Formula E team, we will not sponsor the other teams that we're currently sponsoring." It's all about being in the right place at the right time and knowing exactly what you're interested in, right? Let them speak when they come home. I had kids on a regular basis. College Thanksgiving is different than high school Thanksgiving. They've usually got a couple of days they can come speak to your class, right? Christmas, most colleges get almost a month for a break. High schools don't get that. So you've got some overlap, they can speak. Ladies and gentlemen, that's it for me. By way of how I got here, I was at Liberty Christian for 15 years, ran their program. I am now at Baylor University. I actually teach in health and human performance in an online graduate program. The program we created a couple of years ago is specifically to get kids into med school. How many of y'all are interested in med school at some point? It's kind of what I thought. Now, let me tell you, med schools love engineers. Mechanical engineers, electrical engineers. You can talk to every med school and they love engineers because of the way they think, right? So if your life takes a turn, you may end up majoring in mechanical engineering. Do not count out med school. If you guys have any questions, I'll be in the back. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Michael.